Welcome to Tuesday's lesson. If you weren't in class, please answer the following questions and send them to me via email. So we began this piece of Talmud with the idea that Moses asks three things of God, and God answers these three questions. So the third question, which is the one we're really asking, is when Moshe asks, Mipnei ma, why is it that there are tzaddikim and they have a good life? There are tzaddikim that have a bad life. There are rashaim or evil people that have a good life, and there are rashaim that have a bad life. And God gives Moses the first answer. And that answer is, a tzaddik with a good life, it's a tzaddik, the son of a tzaddik. Tzaddik with a bad life, the tzaddik is son of a bad person. A rasha that has a good life is a bad person, but son of a tzaddik. The rasha that has a bad life is a bad person, and their parents were also bad. So the answer here, so we're calling this answer number one. Kind of say it in like what's the general idea? Okay, we're then going to, that's question number one. The general idea of that is then going to be shot down with this ini vaha, and so it says amar mar tzaddik with a good life. That is a tzaddik whose parent was also a tzaddik. A tzaddik with a bad life, that is a tzaddik whose parents were bad. Ini vaha, but is this really so? Don't we have two different verses that actually talk about the relationship between parents and their children, and parents, children, and punishment? And don't we have two verses that actually contradict each other? So question number two is, how do these two verses contradict each other? Okay. Now, what's going to happen now in the Gemara is that we're going to try to show that actually these two ideas appear like they contradict each other, but they really don't. We're just not understanding that each of them is for a different situation. So it's going to say lo kasha. It is not a contradiction or not a problem. Ha, this one is used for this situation. Ha, this one is used for that situation. So give me an idea about what those two situations could be. That's question three and question four. Okay. And now we get to the answer. Here's what this, they're saying there's not a problem. This verse is talking about when kisha ochzin maaseh avotehem biyodehem, when a child actually goes ahead and grabs onto the deeds of their parents into their hands. Basically, they are continuing acting in the same way as their parents. This verse is when a child decides not to follow the deeds of their parents. So just look back here for a second at these verses. So which one is for which? Which verse, we'll call this one A and this one B. Which one, question number 5, is when a child is what happens when a child does decide to follow the deeds of their parents, which is when the child does not. That's question number 6. And question number 7 is, if we call this explanation number 2, it's giving us a nuanced or new idea of what it means to if your parents were one way or another, how you might be punished. So how is this explanation number 2 about why bad things happen to good people? Okay. And now we move on with this Ella. This Ella means I'm going to give you a completely new understanding, and it's a new idea. And then Hachika Marle. This is what God said to Moses, meaning we saw what we thought God said to Moses was tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik ben tzaddik, that the parent determines whether a person has a good life or a bad life. But this is a new answer altogether. And to really understand this answer, we need to kind of understand something about. But let's first translate it. Rather, this is what God really said. He said a tzaddik that has a good life, that is a tzaddik who is 100% tzaddik. A tzaddik that has a bad life, that is a tzaddik that is not completely 100% of a tzaddik, like an 87% tzaddik. A rasha that has a good life, that's a rasha, that's a bad person who's not completely bad, meaning they have a little bit of good stuff in them. And a rasha that has a bad life, that is a person that's 100% rasha. So now we need to understand something about Gehenna. Let's go back for a second. So if you remember, we have a couple rules about Gehenna. Write down for question number 8. You can see it right here. What are for 8A, B, and C? What are 3 rules about Gehenna? Okay. Now you need to know one other rule about Gehenna. We'll call this rule number 4. That according to Jewish belief, you can reduce your Gehenna time, right? You can reduce your Gehenna time, because what is the goal of Gehenna? Gehenna is to basically say you have a certain amount of bad that you did, and everyone has that bad that you did, and Gehenna kind of gets rid of all that bad. So when you go into Olam Haba, you're going in perfectly without anything wrong with you at all. Now, according to a Jewish belief, you can actually reduce your Gehenna time in this world. So basically, you can reduce your suffering Gehenna by suffering already in this world. So that should actually help understand the whole situation. So if you can reduce your Gehenna time in this world, and if a great object, if one of the main objectives in life is to have a small amount of time of Gehenna, and you can do that either by being completely good, and then you don't have any Gehenna time. But what if you're a little bit bad? Well, one of the things I can do is I can suffer. I can have a part of my life can be bad, and that badness can actually reduce my time in Gehenna. So now we understand actually what the Gemara is saying here. But let's go, first of all, let's see if we can answer these questions right here first. So a good person who suffers on earth, okay, this is question number 9. The suffering on earth makes his time in Gehenna shorter or longer. Question number 10. This allows the person to get to Olam Haba sooner or later. Okay, let's go to the next one. Question number 11. A bad person who never suffers here on earth but has a great life, their suffering on earth makes his time in Gehenna, or really it's the lack of suffering on earth, makes his time in Gehenna what? And this allows a person to get to Olam Haba. Okay, let's go to question number 13. A person who has a good person who has a good life. That means this person must be so good that what? 13. And number 14, a bad person with a bad life. That means this person must be so bad that what? Right. So bad that even anything. I'm sorry, wait a second. Right. Right. It means that anything, even the bad stuff, can't reduce their amount of suffering because they're so bad. Right. Good. So let's move. So let's now go back and give me an explanation for each of these. So we'll start here. A tzaddik with a tovlo is a tzaddik that is 100% tzaddik. Okay, which means what? It's 15. Question number 16. A tzaddik who has a bad life is a tzaddik that is not completely a tzaddik, meaning that they've done a few things wrong. So why are they having a bad life? That's number 16. A rasha that has a good life, a bad person that has a good life, that is a rasha that is not 100% of a rasha. Maybe he's like 50, 60% rasha. And so why is he having a good life? That's number 18. And a rasha with a bad life, why are they having a bad life? All right. So, and then we really come to and so that's an answer. And I will tell you in class that people really were like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense. I don't love that answer. Like that doesn't really work for me." And it for some reason it doesn't work with the Gemara with some people in the Gemara, especially Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir completely disagrees. Okay? And Rabbi Meir looks back at this the beginning of our Gemara piece, and it said, "Amar Rabbi Yochanan." Rabbi Yochanan said, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Moshe requested three things before Hakadosh Baruch Hu, before God. V'natan lo. Moshe asked three questions, and God gave him answers to all three of the questions. But now Rabbi Meir says the following: Shtayim natnu lo, ve'achad lo natnu lo. Two, he answered to him, and one, he didn't answer. Meaning what? Meaning God answered two of the three questions, but one question he didn't answer. And what's the one question he didn't answer? He didn't answer this question: why bad things happen to good people. But actually, it's funny. For some reason, actually, the answer is actually given right here. Shene'emar. It says in the Torah, V'chanoti et asher achon. I will praise, or I will raise up, or I will shine my face upon that person who I will raise up. Af al pi she'eino hogen, even though it's not fair. V'richamti et asher arachem. I will have compassion over the one I will have compassionate over. Af al pi she'eino hagon, even though it is not fair. Okay, so so this is an answer that is now given. Question number 17 is summarize what that answer is. Okay, and really, so we've got basically four answers here. Answer number one: children suffer because of their parents, sins of their parents. Answer number two: children suffer because they continue the sins of their parents. Answer number three: you can do your Gehenna time here on earth by suffering now instead of later. Number four: just because I am God. So we started this unit by this small passage or sugya by asking if we could find the answers to what we believed of these 8 different ideas. Now what I'd like you to do is to map out where some of these ideas fit into what the Talmud actually says. Which answer is number one? Which is number two? Which is number three? Which is number four? So, which is number one is question 18. 19 is which is number two. 20, question 20 is which is number three. Question 21 is which is number four. All right, we started just as a summary, what have we studied so far this year? We've studied Lo Bashamayim Hi, we've studied the Mishnah about Ona'ah, we've studied Takanat HaShavim, we've studied using an animal as the wall of a suga, we studied Rabban Gamliel on his charts of the moon, we studied about redeeming hostages, and we just studied why bad things happen to good people. Where are we going? We're going to start studying Moshe and the time machine. We're going to study then the very first Mishnah, and then we're going to study this great word, teku. So let's start. So we actually did the first 3 lines of this story right here in Masechet Menachot, Seder Kedoshim, Daf 29, Amud. Oh, is it Amud Bet? No. Oh yeah, Amud Bet, and it is Agada, not Halacha. So here we go. Here it is right here, and yeah. So let's just read the first part, and I might have a couple questions to ask. Rabbi Yehuda said that Rab says, when Moshe ascended on high, meaning when Moshe went up on towards God, and right now this is the scene is that Moses is waiting and getting the 10 commandments, and he finds Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that's a name for God, sitting and tying crowns on letters of the Torah. So what does that mean? A crown on the letter of the Torah. Let me just find that and show you an example of a crown on the letter of the Torah. Here is a tikkun. One side is a Torah side and one side is a non-Torah side. And if you see right there, the words themselves, when they're written in the Torah, have little markings above that make it more decorative and more beautiful. And so Moshe, basically, when he's going up to heaven, he finds God doing exactly this, that God is writing the words of the Torah, and that God is making these little beautiful markings. And Moses says before God, Ribono Shel Olam, that's another name for God, who is preventing you from giving the Torah without these additions? Right? What does that mean, by the way? And that's question number 22. And it probably means something like, why can't you give me the Torah right now? Why are we forced to wait? And by the way, the waiting is a very big part of the story of the giving of the Torah, because what happens as the children of Israel are actually waiting, and the waiting is because Moshe is delayed, right? It says in the Torah, b'shesh, like at the 6th hour, but that word boshesh means delay as well. So something is causing Moses to delay in bringing down the 10 commandments, which will ultimately cause the golden calf to be built, ultimately cause these commandments to be destroyed. And God says, there is a man who is destined to be born after several generations. Akiva ben Yosef is his name. He is destined to derive from each and every thorn of these crowns, talin, talin shel halachot, mounds and mounds of Jewish law. It is for his sake that these crowns must be added to the letters of the Torah. And then Moses says, Ribono Shel Olam, show him to me. We've heard about Akiva ben Yosef already. We've heard about him in 2 stories, I believe. And that's how we're going to begin class next week, next day. If hand me in the answers to these questions by Friday for full credit for these, for your full 8 points.